When we're listening to a song, we do hear chords that are played, right? But we are also hearing a kind of leading line of different notes and sounds that makes our ears focus on that. That is the melody, and what we're doing is finding out what that is and how we're breaking that down. We are going to talk about that right now. That is so important. Melodies are the main focus of a song, and it is something that drives the listener and it drives a kind of story. But we have to figure out maybe more of the science. What makes a melody so special? Usually it's the piece that like really moves, okay? But another special quality is that it's the one that you can hear more. Definitely bass notes have their own kind of sound. You can hear all the lower notes, but according to the frequencies of each note, the note's frequency really matters because our hearing range should include those notes. We should be able to hear the notes that we play. And the rightmost note, usually that would be the melody. And that note, since it's the highest note, the rightmost note, that will be the loudest one. It's basically loud. Okay, okay, I just confused myself. Loudness is one way to focus on the note, but if these notes are all the same volume, the frequency would be so important. We have a higher frequency, that one is easily heard. You can make one note louder, and it doesn't matter like if you're on if this note is loud, this note is louder, or that note is louder. It's so important to understand this is we're just achieving focus and melodies, whether they're at the lower end with a higher volume, or maybe it's a different instrument. Any kind of technique you can use main to make it that main focus, it helps make that collection of notes a melody. And with the melody, with the leading example or the leading part of that story, we want to understand those parts of melody. I have three basic movements of a melody. The first one is that no movement at all. No movement. That could be interpreted in many ways. One of the main ways is that it's just staying there. It's not moving. We're just staying home. If we establish C7, C dominant 7 as your home, you can hear it already. We're in C, and just staying home is achieved by tapping or pressing this key over and over again because it is there to emphasize something. Usually, when something's emphasized, it's repeated again and again. That's what makes it stand out. That's the power of no movement. The usual interpretation is that it's it is emphasized more, and that we are staying home. Steps, however, can mean a lot of different things for going down, right? Let's just say, for maybe for an easier way to do this, we can just do a G major scale. We're going down and up, but it gives off a very basic sound. Maybe even a classical sound, because we are basically going across a familiar scale, which is the G major scale, very familiar. It gives off the scale itself is actually being presented here. We are showing that scale, and showing those ideas of the scale. So I might have to change my answer. So maybe the steps on the scales, they don't really, not all of them are very basic. There are different scales that you can use, very different scales that we can talk about later in another video. But it really drives the point that whenever we are using different scales or stepping up and down that scale, we are showing it. Otherwise we won't be playing on a scale. We'll be playing in a very ambiguous type of a scale or sequence of lines or sequence of notes. We can focus more once we have stepping up and stepping down in pitch. But what we also want to talk about is the skips or jumps. However you want to use those words. Those are very physical words, just like steps. We're not just stepping, we're going across many more notes, meaning that in a scale, we are not going up directly, one up or one down. Those are steps. For jumps, you're going to have to take more steps. So basically, the step of the next step of of a undetermined sequence of steps. You want to, they are very different. You'd want to do that. You'd want to make sure that it's not a step, because otherwise that's only one. If you want to have that other step, basically more than one step is going to be a jump. That's kind of what I wanted to say. That would be a jump. That's a step. It's so obvious, but we have to break it down. There are different ways to interpret what jumps and steps and all of those three different types of movements are. And a jump, or depending on how big of the jump, that would also affect the interpretation of it. But we are also understanding that jumps can go forward, jumps can go backwards, right? Similar to steps. You can combine different ones, which I'm doing throughout the video. You can combine a step and a jump and a no movement, and achieve more ideas, right? There are different sequences of jump, steps, and no movements, and they're called licks, they're called jingles, melodies, or motifs. Those are all higher level, complex sequences of those melodic elements. And we want to talk about a lot of what we just talked about in even greater detail so we can get to the bottom of what songs really are, right? Once we look at the parts, we can understand what makes the whole so special, the whole picture, the entire picture that we are, exploring whenever we're learning about music theory.